it, but will you save the record or send me the recording? So starting the recording, so that will be out there. But today we're going to be talking about short-term rentals and talking about how to profit in the post-COVID world with short-term rentals and how to optimize your taxes using short-term rentals as sorry, I'm going to just mute you, Chris. It was getting a little bit of feedback. How to use short-term rentals as a tax strategy especially for people with W-2 income. So thank you, Erik, already for getting the chat started. What we like to do is just, whatever information you're comfortable with sharing in the chat, please feel free to put it out there. So that would be your email, your Instagram or social handles, your website, what your role is in the investment world. Like, do you have STRs? Are you a wholesaler, property manager, aspiring investor, whatever it might be, because this is meant to be a community and we want you all to be staying in touch after this meeting. We've also got QR codes at the end of the presentation for both of our guest speakers, for Erik and Sugey, so that you can connect with them directly if you want to follow up on either the property management aspect with Erik or the tax strategy component with Sugey. So we will just roll right in. I get to the right screen. All right, most of you know who we are already. Sarah and I are realtors here in Central Oregon, investor-focused realtors. We are investors ourselves, and I have a short-term rental, and yeah, I mean, we help a lot of clients. Yeah, and we have tons, like, I would say more than 50% of our clients are short-term rental buyers. So we know a lot about it, but certainly there's always more to learn. So today is all about maximizing your success in short-term rentals. And our quick agenda is we love to just do intros at the beginning to hear who's here. Then Erik's going to go over. Erik works for a company called Summer, just so you're not confused, because we also have Summer Schultz on the call right now, so not to be confused with that. But he's going to go over a market overview, talk about some enhancements that owners may want to consider making to existing STRs in order to make them more profitable and attractive to prospective guests. And then we'll talk about pricing and marketing in the post-COVID world, and then some operational aspects that are important for hosts to know. And then Sugey Piedra from Prominence Business Services is going to chat through the short-term rental tax benefits, and then she's got some case studies that are so fascinating. I peeked at your slides, Sugey, and it's incredible the amount that you can save just by having a short-term rental, especially if you have a W-2 income. So that is so fun. So we'll go through intros and yeah, we'll do that first. So Summer, tell us a little about yourself.
Hi, I'm Summer. One of these days I'm going to have something new to say, but for right now I'm still learning and lots of learning. I have businesses locally. We've had several businesses over the years, but I'm ready for more passive income, and so I'm hoping to have a couple flips and have rentals as soon as possible.
So good. Yes, you are on the path. Committed. We have a weekly power hour that we host in our office this summer, where we're getting investors together and just talking about different strategies to get into investing. And we've got a lot of different people in the room. We've got wholesalers, we have property managers, we have transaction coordinators, we have private money lenders. So it's been really fun just to see the synergies that have been taking place with people doing deals from our power hour that just met, in the last 6 weeks. So Summer, I have every confidence that you will be the proud owner of an investment property soon.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, Will Dyer, welcome. Just give us a little background where you're at, what kind of investments you have, and what you're hoping to learn from today.
Yeah, I've got a vacation rental in the San Juan Islands, and I'm recently trying to get some wholesale deals bought and sold and acquired and disposed, and just kind of new in the realm of real estate. And I'm just kind of trying to make my way through some good information sources to get that done and to make some contacts. And heard about your talk today, which is very interesting to me because of the situation in the San Juan Islands and the vacation rentals there.
Nice. Good. Well, you'll make some good connections today. Where are you buying wholesale deals?
I'm mostly Midwestern, targeting places like Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, Texas, Arizona,
Okay.
maybe North Carolina,
Got
maybe
it.
even Tennessee. I'm planning on doing virtual
Yep.
quite a bit.
Okay. And are you local to the Bend area?
I'm actually in Seattle.
Or you're in Seattle? Okay, awesome. Great. We're glad to have you here.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think Chris King, you were next to join. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Chris King. I'm a structural engineer here in Bend. I'm self-employed. My company is Skyline Engineering, and I'm an aspiring investor. Hopefully, make some moves this next year. And I'm just doing everything I can to learn right now.
Excellent. Well, you're in the right place. Feel free to put your contact info and snag some contact info from the chat. There's some great people on the call you can connect with. And you're welcome to come to our power hour every Tuesday in our office, 4 to 6 p.m. We generally have some ice cold Rainiers and some snacks too. So
Yeah, I'm planning to attend next week. I believe we'll work out.
perfect. Excellent. All right. Welcome.
Thanks.
Yeah. Then we've got William Myers. Welcome. If you're talking, you're on mute.
How's that?
You got it. Yep.
Right on. Sorry, I'm doing a little working listen, doing some landscaping, one of my multifamilies in Redmond. Yeah, so I've been in Central Oregon for I think 15 to 18 years, something like that. I own some multifamilies in the area, and I'm fortunate enough to be able to live on the income from that. And particularly interested in kind of learning how to leverage some of the tax benefits of an STR against some of the income coming up by long-term rentals. So that's kind of why I'm here to listen and learn.
Love it.
Perfect.
In Redmond, you have a lot less regulations than we have here in Bend, so that would be a nice thing to potentially convert some of those for you.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, cool.
Yeah. And you never know who might be on the call that's a future buyer of your multifamily property.
No plans to sell. They'll stay with me to my die. It's my income.
Oh, all right. All right. Well, we can plant the seed anyways.
All right, cool.
Nice. Thanks for joining. Welcome, Justin. Good to see you.
Hey guys. Sorry, what am I supposed to say? I'm Justin. Yeah.
Where are you located currently, Justin?
Well, currently I'm sitting in one of our short-term rentals in Southeast Bend. So just came in to borrow my Wi-Fi for a little while and do some work and check on the house. So yeah, we have 3 houses in Bend. We have a fourplex in Prineville, long-term rental in Portland, and then and we're in contract on another house in Portland. So we're primarily we've got a mix of long-term and short-term rentals, and mostly have gotten into real estate recently to take advantage of the tax benefits of real estate and offsetting W-2 income. So that's where we're at.
Sweet.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, we're glad you're here.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, we're going to let our guest speakers introduce themselves, and then we're going to have Erik start and just talk about the STR market, and then Sugey will take us home with the tax benefits. So, Erik, over to you.
Thanks, Suzanne. Hey, everybody. My name's Erik. I am a real estate investor here and focused mostly on short-term rentals here. I've had the privilege of being able to house hack and do a few different real estate strategies, but I currently own a duplex in Portland that I house hack out of, and the other unit I rent as a short-term rental, covers all the expenses and eliminated my housing expense, which allowed me to save and continue to snowball into another property that these lovely ladies help us acquire just south of Sun River in La Pine, down in Central Oregon. Yeah, and I fell in love with the industry. I started working in the industry about 5 years ago. I wanted to know the back end and the tech side of how short-term rentals succeed and how to professionally maximize properties. So I spent about 3 years working for Vacasa, specifically in the Central Oregon market, which is how I connected with these lovely ladies. And now currently I moved on to join a more boutique property management company called Summer, who specializes in maximizing property potential and has some really creative products and ways to do so. So really excited to chat more about that here. So I'll be talking probably at the second end of this presentation. Just excited to connect with you all.
Super. All right. And then Sugey.
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here today with you guys. My name's Sugey Piedra. I'm located in California, but I was in Oregon just earlier this week. My daughter's actually going to be going to University of Oregon. And so we were out there in orientation. I run a family-owned business in Glendora, California. We are federally licensed and work with clients across the U.S. I started my office about 6 years ago now. I have a 20-year background in tax, but I really wanted to focus in tax planning and strategy behind, just being able to really help clients understand their taxes and understand how we can actually drive them versus, whatever the computer pops out. But in order to do that, I needed to consult clients and I needed to meet with clients one-on-one, get to know their goals, get to know, what it is that they're trying to achieve. And I needed to do that on my own. No CPA office that I ever worked for wanted to dedicate the time and energy that it takes to get to know clients at that level. So my sisters and I started the business on our own. We're very forward thinking. This whole thing is behind the rich dad, poor dad methods. This is, trying to create, tax-free wealth, creating that financial freedom that I've learned through mentors like these individuals that I follow, that I'm part of their networks, that I meet with on a weekly basis, to really be able to implement those types of strategies. The real estate world is about the only strategy available where you can literally make money, create wealth, and yet pay close to, if not zero, in taxes. So it's an amazing strategy when you know how to leverage it, when you know how to use it. And so that's what I'm here to talk about, a little bit of that. But overall, just to show that there's other types of tax preparers out there, tax planning individuals that can really dig and help you plan and strategize so that the return turns out the way you want it to. And you just have to find the right individuals to work with. So,
yeah. That's great. And can you just chat quickly about your business model? The last time we talked, you mentioned that it was a subscription-based monthly model. Are you still doing that?
Yeah, so that's just one of the programs that we offer. But yes, how we are able to create this relationship and meet with clients is by doing the mid-year, quarterly, or year-end meetings, right? Because most of us meet with our tax preparers at tax time, which is usually, January through April, and just to kind of tie up whatever happened the year before. Well, in order for us to drive that tax return, we need to meet, and I have different programs, whether we meet quarterly, mid-year or year-end kind of a deal, to make sure that we are designing the tax return. And so we know what to go do, what to go purchase, you know, how to make these properties or whatever the strategy may be, how to implement it throughout the current calendar year, so that by the time December rolls around, you've already done all your homework, you've already done everything that you need to do. And when it's tax time, the return ends up looking exactly the way we had planned, the way we wanted it to. You checked off all the boxes, so I'm not concerned about whether, you know, you did this or you didn't do that. Like, you know, there's accountability on our end to helping you make sure that you're tracking your hours, that, you know, you're doing everything you need to do for whatever it is, the strategy that you're trying to implement. So our office meets with clients a lot more frequently than just once a year.
Got it. And from here, you are noted that you're federally licensed, meaning that you can work with clients in all 50 states, correct?
That is correct. I do. And as you guys know, I have real estate properties in Ohio, but my clients have real estate properties throughout the US. I promote diversifying our doors like we diversify our stock. And there's different reasons why you want to do things like that, but mostly obviously industry crashes, you know, natural disasters, you know, just the type of strategy that you're after. When we have you ladies present for my team, I'm looking for properties that, you know, appreciate more than cash flow. So it just, you know, it's going to depend on what the strategy is, where I would point my clients to saying, hey, your next purchase should be a property like this. And if that's not in your neighborhood, like, for example, I'm in California, so if it's not in our budget, you know, to buy a property that's $700,000 or $800,000 and it's not going to cash flow, you know, it's not really what we're after. We may look for somewhere else, and that's why we have those other, you know, available properties in different parts of the United States.
Excellent. Good. Well, we get a lot of people in our network ask us for recommendations in your field. So I just wanted to make clear what you do and who you can serve. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. We're going to kick it on over to Erik. Let's talk about the market for short-term rentals after COVID.
Hey, everybody. So, yes, let's dive into this. Basically, short-term rentals have been such a hot topic over the last few years. And being able to analyze the market on a month-by-month basis has really been interesting post-COVID. In the industry here, we kind of talk about things pre-COVID and post-COVID. It seems from a general sense that while COVID restrictions were in place, everybody wanted to travel. And so the tail end of 2020, 2021 was the best year ever for short-term rental income. It got popularized, and there was just a wave of influx into the short-term rental market from investors. You know, and now things have changed a little bit. That doesn't mean the short-term rental market is dying by any means, but it's certainly maturing. So things are changing, things are maturing. Just about in every industry this happens, and we're noticing a trend. We're noticing a stabilization. We're noticing guests changing their expectations. And so we want to just watch and assess and basically implement to make sure that we're still maximizing based on what's going to be successful. So I'm excited to chat through a little bit of how that's been happening and how to make sure that we can kind of evolve with the short-term rental space and make sure that our investments are still exciting investments and profitable, of course. So one important thing to note here, our guests are now in control of these new expectations. Basically, what's happening is things now aren't the same as 2021, and guests are expecting more of a hotel boutique feel, especially here in Central Oregon. Things are changing with Airbnb, where when guests are leaving reviews, Airbnb is coming in and helping them assess the cleanliness level, helping them assess how to rate specific properties. Just because there's more competition in the market, it takes a lot more for properties to stand out. So guests being in control means that us as operators need to treat our properties as a business now. It's not going to be the same performance with your property as it was in 2021, because there's more competition for the same demand revenue, if not a more steadily growing revenue touch as well. So we can go to the next slide here if you want. So talking about enhancing the property a little bit here. Here are a few things that we've noticed specifically that are things that need to be paid attention to. Interior design is no longer an optional thing for short-term rentals. If you think about it this way, when you go and you look at a property to book, the first thing you see is going to be the image on your listing. So that's really the only real estate that you have to show what you have to offer. So this is no longer an optional thing, and having immaculate interior design, making sure your place looks clean and livable and showing that experience to your guests is something that really will set you out from the rest of the pack, especially with the influx of supply over the last few years. We've seen a tremendous growth in a lot of markets where year over year, there's about 30 to 40% an increase in supply, new short-term rentals, but not every market grows at that rate for demand. So if you buy a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house in a residential neighborhood, and a year later, there's 10 other rentals in that neighborhood that have the same layout, the same exact home, you're competing for the same demand unless demand is outpacing that supply. So interior design is really important. Making sure that you display the property well with incredible photographs and making sure that you're creating that experience where people can basically put themselves in your place regardless of what they're looking for. If they're looking for a bachelorette party, if they're looking for a certain event, it's very, very important to make sure that you're displaying your property as best as possible. And Suzanne, I just realized I got ahead of myself here a little bit. So if we can go back to the previous slide, there's a few more items that I did want to touch on that.
You bet.
So one thing that I want to elaborate on with these new guest expectations here is as the market is evolving and maturing, there's an increased desire for frictionless stays. So guests are looking for amenities similar to a hotel experience with privacy in the home. So these aren't things that you haven't heard before. You've heard of keyless entry. You've heard of things like automating your property in certain ways. This has now become a standard. As there's more options in the market, just like there are more options in the hotel market that is fully matured, guests are looking for a more boutique experience. They want to make sure that they're not bothered on the property. They want to make sure that they can have this private kind of experience when booking a property. So I recommend this for multiple reasons. One, ease of use and ease of management from a distance. Keyless entry really isn't something that's hard to implement, and it makes sure that things don't get lost in the shuffle. So the days of having a lockbox with a key that your guests plug in, get the key, access your home, put it back when they leave are gone, because it's going to cause issues with people stealing your key, etc. What's really cool on the automation front is there's been a lot of tech inventions that have really supported the short-term rental hosts, notably guests being able to connect to the sound system, guests being able to have bookable add-ons and digital guidebooks. When they book your place and they arrive at your property, you can send them a digital guidebook of everything around your property locally that they could ever want. Hiking trails, biking trails, restaurants, coffee recommendations, stuff like this. And there's companies that can help build these for you very easily, as well as an automated property management software that can send out automated messaging, that can coordinate vendor issues. It's in your best interest to kind of automate as much as possible as a short-term rental host while still making the guest feel supported. Any questions on that so far in terms of the frictionless stay?
So are those things that you can do if you're self-managing? You can kind of outsource some of those tasks?
Yes, and that's why I definitely recommend a few companies here that I can also add in the links or in the chat. There's a lot of companies that do very well for the short-term rental self-manager to automate this system. Whether you're an existing short-term rental owner or you partner with a property management company or you're looking to buy a short-term rental, it's essentially running a new business. And just like opening a new business, it takes time to generate the clientele. It takes time to basically implement your customer service structure. So if you don't put these automations in place, you're essentially going to create another job for yourself. And I would bet almost everything I own. Everybody on this meeting here is not looking for another job to suck up all their time. So all of this can be very cheaply implemented and create a rubric around managing your short-term rental business and take a lot of that time out of your hands in terms of communication with the guests. The other thing to mention here with guest expectations before we move on is cleaning. So cleaning standards have gotten much more rigid. And what I wanted to touch base on here is actually from the guest side, how from Airbnb or VRBO, the booking channels, how they support the guest through the cleaning rating process has changed. So if we're a guest staying in a short-term rental property, upon checkout, you're going to be prompted to leave a review for the stay. Now, what's interesting is Airbnb and the booking channels have an obligation to support the guests and the hosts. Of course, as hosts, we want 5-star reviews. We want great ratings. On the guest side, it's important to be educated on how to leave reviews, how to accurately leave these reviews, because 1 or 2 poor reviews can really destroy your performance on the host side of things. So what's interesting is when guests leave a review on Airbnb, when they're going to rate the cleaning, Airbnb prompts them to say, leaving a 5-star review means this property was exceptionally clean. And leaving a 4-star review means this property was very clean. Well, how are they going to know the designation and distinction between an exceptionally clean home but a very clean home? If they decide to leave a 4-star review because your property was very clean, not exceptionally clean, that can really hurt your performance as a host. So it's important to get ahead of these things, communicate with our guests, educate them on, what the difference is in star ratings and how they rate the hosts and how that affects the hosts as well as best you can. The best way to do that is to be in communication with them throughout their stay, and automation can really help do so they feel supported through their stay as well. Okay, we can move on to the next slide here. We talked a little bit about interior design. Another interesting way that we're seeing people create enhancements to their property is creating a shoppable experience. And I'll link some options here, but one really cool company that we found is called Minoan. And Minoan is a company that you can utilize to purchase furnishings for your short-term rental. You can also utilize them for purchasing linens, purchasing basically anything you would need to furnish your property. And the benefit to doing so through Minoan is they've negotiated wholesale discounts from all these different vendors from the low end to the high end, where they have a membership service and all of us short-term rental hosts on Minoan can purchase through there at a discount. So this is a really interesting avenue for saving some money and being able to capitalize on some higher end furnishings, some higher quality furnishings. However, it's not quite their most beneficial feature in my mind. What actually stands out through Minoan to me is all of these products that you can purchase through Minoan. They have the ability to create you a quote unquote shopping list for your property and package that into a QR code that you can display in your property. And what this does is if you create an incredible experience in your place, guests can then shop the furnishings and equipment that you provide in your home by scanning said QR code. If they actually purchase any of the items in your home through that QR code, you as a host would get an affiliate commission on the sale. So what's really cool about this is it's essentially creating an additional revenue stream to monetize further your short-term rental. Now, this can obviously be more powerful if your property looks incredibly designed, which is just hitting that first point we talked about, interior design, making sure your property displays well even further. Another way that we're seeing hosts and us as property managers are really maximizing the potential for property are local partnership discounts. People are visiting your properties for specific reasons, whether it's they want to travel to that city, whether it's attending an event, etc. So really integrating into that community is mutually beneficial for those local businesses, you as a host, as well as offering additional value to your guests. So what I'm referring to here is, if your properties are near really popular restaurants that you love, maybe a farmer's market or breweries or wineries, take the time to go in, introduce yourself, introduce your business and your rental, and see if they would offer a discount for your guests. If they mention your property, you could create even a card that you leave in your property. And if they bring said card to those restaurants, maybe they get a little discount. You can communicate this to your guests, and to them, it just shows as that next step in value, that next step in integrating in the local community and offering them a little bit of an extra experience. Another thing we're seeing and that we're also doing as summer property management to kind of set ourselves apart from everybody else is integrating add-on services. If you have a higher end property or a property in a really popular area, you can partner with local masseuses, private chefs, local experiences. Maybe there's a walking tour, or I just recently visited Dallas and we did a JFK assassination conspiracy tour, saunas and cold plunges, or even the local gym. You can negotiate a free daily rate for your guests to come and visit. All of these can be add-on services that you can implement in your listings for guests who are looking for booking your property. They can basically purchase these add-on services, and you can get a cut of these services for whatever you negotiate with these vendors. But to the guest perspective, this just looks like added value for booking your property instead of your competition's property. So this can increase occupancy. You can charge higher nightly rates because you offer more for your property. It's just supplemental value. And all of these things are mutually beneficial for you and these local businesses. The last thing I wanted to touch on is integrating smart home technology. We talked a little bit about automation, but some really, really cool technology is coming out to make things even easier for you. One, again, is going to be keypads for entry. At one of my rentals, I actually just had a guest who booked a week's stay, and then as soon as they showed up, they claimed that the home smelled like animal urine, and they demanded a full refund. However, I went into the property, and my cleaner, as well as myself, everything was immaculate. There was no smell. They were just trying to get all their money back or squat in the property. But I was able to go in on my keyless entry pad, deactivate this guest code so they couldn't have access to the property, and all of that could be done remotely. So this can really save you from any potential issues need be. Another thing that's really awesome technology-wise to implement into your rentals are noise-aware software. So you can use plug-in noise monitors. They just plug into outlets, and they monitor the decibel level of your guests. Now, it doesn't record audio, but this is really beneficial if you have a popular property. Say, Will, you said you had a property up in the San Juan Islands. I also have one that's riverfront in Central Oregon, draws a lot of party interests. That being said, using these plug-in noise monitors can help make sure that there's not an excessive amount of people at your property or an excessive amount of noise being created where there might be a party going on that was unwarranted or that they didn't inform you about prior. So this can really help prevent future damages, and it's a really easy software to implement and has an app you can just monitor decibel level on. Another thing that we use in the property management world is guest screening technology, which I highly recommend. There's a company that we partner with called AutoHost, and they can use AI to do guest screening for your inquiries. So instead of automatically accepting bookings, they can do some background screening software, making sure that they have previous reviews from past stays, making sure they have a phone number, an email address, and an ID tied to their reservation before accepting bookings can really cut down on the potential scammers you could have for reservations and make sure your property is kept well and guests are respecting your property.
I have a question.
Sure.
Would you say from your experience that the safeguards within Airbnb specifically are not robust enough to do that? Like, I have my short-term rental and I have it set so that the only people who can book are people with a verified identity and past reviews. Is that not enough?
It's something, but I would certainly take it to the next level and have some double verification through AutoHost. And the reason I'm saying that is for your average guest, it is enough who's paying attention to the rules. However, we've heard horror stories of people getting around that, whether it be with fake ID, fake email addresses, etc. People will create new accounts if they've been banned from Airbnb with a new fake email, a new fake ID card, and continue to book properties that way. So it's a pretty inexpensive way to have some double verification that the guests that are staying in your property are going to take care of it well and understand the rules.
Great.
Yeah. The last one that's really interesting that we're seeing is email collection and basically proprietizing your guest reservation details. There's a really cool company called StayFi. And what StayFi focuses on is Wi-Fi integration. So we all know that Wi-Fi is fairly important for short-term rentals. We want it when we're staying, and we want to offer it to guests. What StayFi does is it kind of tethers off of your existing Wi-Fi, so nothing needs to change. But what it does is it collects reservation and guest data for us to future market to. So if you've ever been in a Starbucks or any coffee shop and you're trying to log on to the Wi-Fi, maybe even in an airplane, it does this too. It'll give you a prompt screen where you have to enter your name, maybe your phone number and an email, and then it gives you the access to the free Wi-Fi. What StayFi does is they allow you to brand your login page like that. You can brand it as your short-term rental, welcome your guests to your property. You can include your guest rules or check-in, check-out instructions there. But ultimately, the goal is to collect their name and their email in this login page. Once they do that, they get access to your Wi-Fi and they'll never be asked for that again. But in essence, what you've done is you then captured their reservation information and you're building yourself an email list. What's beneficial about this is you can email market to these people. Let's say you collect their information for a reservation in the middle of June. That next following year, if that week happened to be available, you can then market to these people saying, hey, the weekend you stayed in our property last year was available. Would you like to book it for a discount? You can communicate with your existing clientele this way. And supplementally, this creates value for your business. You're then taking your own clients off of the booking channel, and your business isn't directly and only tied to Airbnb or VRBO. You've collected your traveler information, and this could be valuable in the future for selling your property because you now own this proprietary guest information that you could sell in addition to the value of your short-term rental. You can sell your email list that's now tied to it. Any questions on that?
I love that.
Pretty cool technology.
Mm-hmm.
It's essentially like you're selling a business. Just as you'd sell a business with your existing Rolodex of clients, you're creating your own Rolodex of clients for your short-term rental business.
Yeah.
Suzanne, I think we can go to the next slide now if you're ready. So another way we can optimize our properties is understanding what to do about pricing, how to price ourselves competitively and strategically in the market. Now, you can partner with professional management for this, and usually they have a revenue manager who's very experienced at doing so, but there's actually some really cool technology for self-managers in understanding how this works and understanding what is competitive pricing. So the level one of doing this in the short-term rental world was just picking a nightly rate that sounded exciting and kind of just copying that across all nights of the year. We've now noticed that based on demand, we can charge higher rates for peak season. And during periods of low demand, we can lower those nightly rates and capture more occupancy, capture more bookings. But what's really nice is we now have technology that can basically automate this for us, and we can set boundaries through companies like Price Labs of what we want our pricing to be. And it can automatically adjust pricing based on demand, based on local seasonality. There's a few different companies that do this sort of thing. Price Labs is my favorite. Beyond Pricing also does this. Airbnb also now has their own proprietary smart pricing, but it's only based on data within their own system. So this chart here to the right is a screenshot of one of my rentals in my Price Labs dashboard. So in Price Labs, what's really cool is you can view the neighborhood data. And this is a chart of the local neighborhood data for one of my rentals. This is based on 5-bedroom properties, and it's color coded. So sorry if the text there is a little bit small for you to see, but basically it's assessing the lower 25th percentile, the average 50th percentile, and the upper 75th percentile for pricing of local comparable short-term rentals in my area that are also 5 bedrooms. The black line in the middle is what my pricing is currently at for every single night of the year. So this kind of helps me understand, am I priced too low? Am I priced too high? Based on the exact quality of your property. So you might have a beautiful, gorgeous property on a lake with a hot tub, with a pool, etc. And you can price your property within this graph in comparison to the high end of the local comps. And on the other side, maybe you're just getting started. Maybe you have an entry-level home. This will really help you understand where am I priced in comparison to my competition in the market. And you can adjust accordingly if it shows that you're too low, if it shows that you're too high, if you need more bookings, etc. Any questions on that graph, or any questions on dynamic pricing through short-term rentals at all?
I use Price Labs as well, and for me it's $20 a month for one property, so it's really affordable, and it more than pays for itself in terms of giving you a lot more data and robust tools to maximize your nightly rate than like the Airbnb smart pricing.
I agree. And what I also really like about Price Labs is you can add in seasonal pricing. So if you know your seasonal times, and Price Labs can help you figure out what seasonality would look like for demand in your specific area, you can add in seasonality pricing where, if guests are booking outside of a certain window, if they're trying to be planners and book Christmas 2 years from now at your property, you can set a premium on those rates in order to let them do that. You can add in automation. So what you'll notice too is a lot of people like to book weekends, which is great. But if people book 4 weekends of your month, just the weekends, you still got to fill Monday through Thursday or Friday. And sometimes after the fact, that's really hard to do. So you can add in pricing automation to incentivize longer stays, to discount rates from Monday through Thursday. And you can also add in rolling discounts where, let's say your property's fairly booked 2 months and 3 months in the future, but for the next 3 weeks from today, you really want to fill that up. It's an open calendar. You can offer a rolling discount where the closer to the date it gets, it offers guests a better discount. So if they were to book your property tomorrow, they might get 30% off your nightly rates. But if they were looking to book 3 days from now, they might get 26% of a discount. So all of this can be automated and implemented through Price Labs and pricing software to basically maximize your calendar of bookings and fill your property as much as possible. Another cool strategy we're trying out here is I recently had to change my cleaning staff. We were getting less than favorable reviews for the cleaning, and after several conversations, things weren't improving. So I compared rates, and we got better pricing with a new cleaning company that we've implemented in one of our properties. So we're able to save $50 on our cleaning fee. But instead of just lowering that cleaning fee to guests or keeping that cleaning fee the same as it was, we're testing the market with offering seasonal cleaning rates depending on demand. So during the summertime, it's a lot easier to book the property, and we can keep a 90 to 100% occupancy rate with the cleaning fee as it was. So what we're testing out is keeping the cleaning fee as it was, capturing some additional revenue through the summer months. However, I now have the flexibility to lower the cleaning fee by $50 per reservation during the slow months and see if that incentivizes more bookings when we're looking to book the property more during the slow months. So you can really get creative with this to see what works best for your property.
Love it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's it here. So we're going to operational efficiency. So we talked a little bit about automation. We talked a little bit about how to implement property management software. These are going to be 3 different companies that I recommend for streamlining your operations here. Guesty is basically a property management software for vacation rentals. Hospitable is another. I use Hospitable. But what these companies will do is really have your business communicate with itself through the different channels. So it can help you automate guest communication, making sure all your guests have your address, your house rules, your check-in codes. It can speak to your keyless entry pad so that it'll create automatically guest codes for your guests that will deactivate after their stay. You can add in automated messaging before checkout. You can add in whatever you would need to make sure that your guests feel supported. So I would highly recommend implementing and using a property management software to help you manage your short-term rentals. It can still be personalized. It doesn't take out the personal touch, and it's fairly inexpensive. I think it's $20 a month as well for this property management software. Pivoting here, another company that would really help with this is Turno here. So I have Turno listed. Turno is essentially a app that's designed to find cleaning staff. So that's going to be the hardest part of every short-term rental business, is having reliable cleaning staff and making sure that they're happy and cleaning up to your standards on a reservation by reservation basis. So Turno is really helpful because you can add in your property there. You can link your booking channel calendars, and every time there's a new reservation, it will send out a bid to available cleaners in the area, and they can accept that bid. They can give you their pricing, and you can basically have responsibility on both ends, where you accept their bid as a host and they accept the property clean. So there's responsibility on both ends for every reservation. It's all automated in the software. You can communicate with those cleaners, make sure they show up. You can require them to submit pictures during their clean, etc., and just make sure that you're managing that appropriately. All this can also integrate within the property management softwares above, Hospitable and Guesty, to make sure that your business is working like a well-oiled machine. Any questions on the operational efficiency stuff or those specific apps or websites?
I put all the links in the chat too for most
Perfect.
of the things you're talking about.
Perfect. Another really cool part of this, and we can move on to this slide, that's totally fine. The last thing I wanted to mention about that, if you only have 1 property or 0 properties right now, I still recommend familiarizing yourself with these automation companies because they make it very easy to scale. If you're looking to have 1 short-term rental or 100, it's a very easy and repeatable system that will help you scale effectively and not require tons more of your time. So if you familiarize yourself with how to implement these automation techniques now with 0 or 1 properties, it's going to make it that much more easy when you have 5, 10, 15, 20, because you already have that structure in place to support scaling your business. Here we go. So the next thing I'll touch on is the importance of local teams and maintenance. So for example, here, I'll just give a quick example of something that happened in one of my properties. We had guests staying at our Lapine house, and one of the toilets upstairs clogged. And unfortunately, those guests did not know how to shut off the water to the toilet. The bathroom flooded and water seeped through the floor and was dripping from the ceiling on the floor below. Obviously, this is a horrible situation and nobody wants to get this call, but luckily we had a local handyman in place and our cleaning staff ready to call and go and visit the property and basically stop the issue before it got any worse. So it's still very important to have those local connections and local vendors that you can rely on for emergencies. Turno is a great app where you can find those resources, whether it be cleaning, There's also a lot of apps that can help you find handymen or local professionals that can help you service anything if you're not local to the area. So I highly recommend making sure you have some contacts there in your Rolodex. Another thing I'd recommend doing is testing your efficiencies often and making sure you can identify areas to improve. Just as a business does audits and secret shops, you should secret shop your properties. Book your place, go stay in your property, assess the clean from a guest perspective and what kind of guest experience your cleaners and your local staff are helping you provide, because you don't know what you don't know, especially if you're buying a property in a place you don't live in. It's very important to get this done. I just did this recently and didn't realize my coffee machine was broken because my cleaning staff didn't inform me that it was broken. We had to wait until we got a less than favorable review and visiting the place ourselves before we identified these easy, simple fixes. As long as our team let us know properly, we could have handled it before it became an issue. So test those often. Lastly here, I just really want to touch on when you're operating a short-term rental here effectively, you need to focus on the balance between what your property offers and what services you offer for your guests. Okay, so I'm talking about when your property, what your property offers is its physical location, its proximity to local amenities, the demand for a property in that area, and what amenities you have in the place. Your property might be riverfront, it might have a pool, it might not have anything outside of that, but it's important to balance that with the service you offer. If you have an amazing property in an amazing location, well, you certainly don't have to come up as much on the guest service side of things because your property is so great, but it's still equally important. The properties and the operational owners for short-term rentals who are still crushing it in most markets understand that it's a balance between both. It's about maximizing what your property offers and the amenities for your guests, displaying it well on the booking channels, and also showing up to deliver that support for them, being there to answer their questions. No matter how obnoxious and dumb the question might seem, they like feeling heard and seen. I had somebody ask recently, they asked me to book a reservation for them at a local restaurant. You know, they'll ask you some crazy things sometimes. It doesn't matter so much if you have the direct answer or not. They just want to feel seen and heard, and that can lead to a great guest experience. So even if you don't have the most expensive property in the best possible location, you can match the maximization of that property with amazing guest communication and support. And all these automation companies that we mentioned above can really help support you in doing so. So that's it in a nutshell for operational efficiency. I think the last thing I want to touch on is the next slide.
Okay. We just want to make sure. Can people hang for like another 10 minutes so we can get to the juicy tax stuff? I'm going to take silence as a yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, you guys.
Sorry, you guys.
Worth
Yeah,
it.
really.
5 figures worth it to stick around.
Oh yeah. We'll cruise through this here real quick. So just to finish this up here, you guys, just as an example, Suzanne and Sarah helped us find an amazing property in La Pine here. It was an existing short-term rental. It was being managed by the sellers, and we picked it up. This property is going to need some work over time, but really all we did here with this property was we improved some minor painting. We obviously improved the photos. You can see the original photos of the property in the left. This is kind of the quality they had on their listing. And on the right side is how we optimized it. And as you can see, we have a 4.92 star rating, 53 reviews. All we did was a little bit of paint, updated photos. I didn't even change the furnishings. We added air conditioning, which is just what the property needed. And I'm listening to the customers. All the guests that ask questions, I answer within 5 to 10 minutes. And we've implemented automation. So really low cost expenses here. And we've already improved the performance of the property by over 45% year over year. So that's pretty amazing just for these minor things. And we have plans in the future of investing further in this property and making it amazing. But very, very low cost things and implementing customer service improved the performance for this property immensely. So whether it's you self-managing or partnering with professionals, like Summer, there's really a lot you can do to make sure you're still tapping into the high-end revenue and being a standout property in the market that you're in. Okay, that's about it, guys. I'm so sorry we took so long to go through those slides here. But ultimately, if you have any questions or any concerns or any properties you'd like revenue projections of, please reach out. I work with a property management company globally. We can do design, we can do management, we can do searching for properties for you. So if you're really curious on what your property or what a future property could do revenue-wise for short-term rentals, don't hesitate to reach out to me.
Yeah, and we've got a QR code coming up, so we'll make sure everyone has that. But everyone, did you see over here? This is a cat mirror in the bathroom. This was one of the funniest things that I've seen in homes that we've toured. The cat mirror is gone, right?
Yes, the cat mirror is long gone. That was one of the first things to go. No more grandma chic.
That was so funny. All right, Sugey, let's hear the juicy numbers, all the good stuff about STRs.
Yeah, well, Erik gave a lot of really good information and a lot of really good tools that I think when we decide that this is kind of where we want to go, that we have access to. There's, the tax benefits are boring. I'll break them down as much as I can. But if you guys do have any questions, please just chime in, okay? So if we can go to the first slide here. So real estate, like I mentioned before, is about the only tax strategy available that can still, that we can utilize and take advantage of and generate some really cool tax savings, create cash flow and pay little to no tax to them, offset other kind of income. So the three ways that we could do this is the first column where I have the $25,000 deduction there is the IRS allows us to take up to $25,000 of a loss against our real estate, portfolio, but limits do apply here. So there's phase outs and your income has to be under the $150,000 a year. So again, this is something where it doesn't matter if your income's W-2 income, if it's other real estate income, small business K-1 income. It's just, they're saying if your income is under 150,000, we'll allow, some up to $25,000. The phase out starts at 100,000. So a lot of the times people are like, well, I make more than that, right? So it's really hard to meet those qualifications. But then again, sometimes I have clients that, with proper strategy, let's say they are in a W-2 income making, 150 a year. Maybe they can max out like their 401k contributions and bring the income below that 150 mark. And all of a sudden they get the deduction of the retirement, plus they allow some of that $25,000 released against their income now. So there's ways that we can look at this to take advantage of it if you're close to that income level. But if there's no chance because you make more money and there's no way we can make it, then we look at the next column. The next column is the real estate professional status. So a lot of people try to make this the strategy of choice. They want to be able to be considered real estate professional. You want to make sure you document your hours, okay? The IRS, and there's a lot of case studies out there that that are, trying to prove that they're real estate professional, and they lose against the IRS because of documentation. Because the IRS sometimes, depending on the auditor, will go and be like, were you really at that property painting the picket fence when, according to your banking transactions, you were traveling in Europe? Like, they'll match up your personal transactions with your log. And so sometimes people fail because of little things like that. They didn't think that the IRS would take the time to verify those logs. And the one thing that the IRS first, when you're getting audited, they will subpoena is banking records, because that's how they could see and they could, where our transactions are occurring. So if we're, taking care of our, short-term rental in Oregon but I'm out in Europe at the same time, like they just won't add up and we lose. So they want to make sure that those logs are that they're accurate and that you're jotting down everything that you possibly can and have it recorded and safe and documented. One of the things that people automatically don't qualify is if they have a full-time job. And it's not that you're not a real estate professional. I have a lot of clients who are either doctors or they're in, some other field and they have a full-time job somewhere else, but yet evenings and weekends and, any time off, or they're working really long shifts, keeping up their short-term rentals or their rental properties. But yet the fact that they have a full-time job disqualifies them from being real estate professional. Now, that's not written in the IRS code, but every time you look at an IRS case, the full-time job, according to the IRS, disallows them. IRS says there's no way you can have a full-time job and yet meet the 750 hours that you need to be a real estate professional. So a lot, and yet we could prove that it is true, but we could do it, but they get disallowed because of that full-time job. So when you have a full-time job, you just have to be careful. Sometimes we have a spouse that doesn't work. So for example, let's say we have a doctor and a spouse that's a stay-at-home, homemaker. Well, then all of a sudden we could potentially use the spouse to keep up with the real estate professional status. Now, there are IRS cases out there where they lost a case because the spouse had no clue what was going on with the rentals. And so when they asked specific questions, they failed. So we want to make sure if we're going to say we're a duck, that we walk and quack like a duck. Because if we're not, it's not going to fly. And this is only in cases where there is some sort of an audit. But you want to be prepared and you want to make sure that if you're going to put your spouse as a real estate professional, that the spouse is aware that you're using maybe the spouse's phone number to make sure that text messages go to the spouse, that things just line up, that the email addresses belongs to the spouse, just to make sure that the IRS doesn't catch us on something where we're not potentially meeting all of their, all of the rules and regulations on a real estate professional because we help the spouse manage the properties. So just things like that you want to be very cautious with. To be considered real estate professional, you do not need to have a real estate license. You do not need to be practicing real estate and selling and buying properties like that. But you do have to have 750 hours in the real estate world. So managing your properties, you could be a real estate professional, you could be a contractor. There's certain industries that automatically fall within that real estate professional status. And you just have to be working more than 750 hours in the real estate world. So it's important that you log those hours to make sure that every year you meet the 750 hours. Now, if you have multiple properties, if you were to group them as one category in just real estate, then all the hours that you work on in all your properties combined can add up to the 750 hours. So there's different ways that we can meet those 750 hours if that's the status that you're trying to go for. So like Erik said, in the last few years, STR, short-term rentals, became really popular. And a lot of the things is not just COVID or what happened, but it was actually the 2018, the tax code that happened. What happened with short-term rentals is because short-term rentals, if they're rented under 7 days or less, then they fall in this loophole where the IRS says they're not really considered real estate. So guess what? You no longer are limited by that $25,000. You're no longer limited by the real estate status because they're not considered real estate. The IRS says as long as a guest stays there 7 days or less, then it opens up the ability for you to take losses against that property. Now, the difference is that when you have a long-term rental, between the rents that you're receiving, the mortgage interest, property taxes, insurance, depreciation, most long-term rental properties either have small cash flow, break even, or don't have this huge profit. Here comes short-term rentals, totally on the different end, where short-term rentals, because of the fact that you can rent them for more, you can have all those amazing amenities like Erik talked about. And so all of a sudden you make more money on your short-term rentals. And so there's no losses to really take against them. They're actually cash flowing. They're actually generating income for you. So that's where the strategy comes in. We've got to figure out ways to reduce that income in the tax world and do away with it through accelerated depreciation is what we use. But with this one, you could have a full-time job. IRS doesn't care if you're a doctor and you have short-term rentals. They don't care if you are some sort of an architect or an engineer, or that, you know, you have a full-time job, you know, somewhere else. They don't care. They say, as long as you meet the short-term rental qualifications, then you could take any losses generated on those rentals against your full-time job. They do want you to show material participation. I'll go over a little bit more about what is material participation. And with material participation, there's a couple different ways we can qualify, but the most important one is that clients say, well, I can do 100 hours. That's not a problem. The thing is that with 100 hours, you have to be the one that works 100 hours, but no more than anyone else. So meaning no one else can work 100 more than you. So that comes a little tricky when you have trusted cleaning service individuals or teams that you work with, a trusted property manager that you work with, because potentially those individuals will end up working more than you, and then you would miss out on that short-term rental loophole. So if you go to the next screen, I kind of break it down a little bit more, and I know I'm going kind of fast. You can just always call me and we can, you know, go in detail on your situation. With material participation, there are 7 tests that'll help you determine what material participation is. But we're going to go over the most 3 common, just because these are the easiest ones to kind of, you know, qualify for. So the first one, you know, participation. Substantially, all the services have to be done by you and nobody else. So if I have somebody who has a profession somewhere else, they may not be the individual that does everything for their property. I have visited quite a bit of Airbnbs, and you do see the owners being the cleaning service and the maintenance guy and doing all that stuff, but not always. And so that may be a little harder to meet for some, but you know, for me, I wouldn't want to be the one that does everything. So we go to option number 2, which is the 100 hours, right? If you're going to do the 100 hours and more than anyone else, you must track the other people's hours as well. So I cannot just go in an audit and say, well, I was the one that worked 100 hours in my properties and no one else did. Well, I have to prove that my, you know, handyman Henry didn't go in there more than 100 hours. I have to track the hours. I have to track the cleaning people's hours. I have to track my property manager's hours. So it becomes a little bit of a headache, but there's softwares out there. There's Excel sheets we could use, you know, to help track things like this. But again, remember, if if this is the strategy that you're going to go after, it's good to know what the rules are and how to keep up with it, so that you do the hours on a weekly, monthly basis, instead of waiting and see if there's ever some sort of an audit and now you're trying to go back and backdate all this stuff and try to remember what you did, you know, 3 years ago or whatever. So it's best that we upkeep it on a monthly basis, weekly basis, and that way it's not going to be such big homework if anything were to ever come up. When I do your tax return, you don't have to bring all this stuff to me. You just have to, you know, certify that you're doing all this stuff. I want to make sure that you're logging. We have tools to help you. So you just want to make sure that you are doing it. The third option is 500 hours yearly. Again, what that means is you don't have to be the only one. You just have to be working in your short-term rentals at least 500 hours throughout the year in this one property, or if you group them, all of your properties. So again, it's about logging and keeping track of your hours. That this is what they want. The IRS wants to make sure that you understand what the rules are behind short-term rentals and that you're taking advantage. Now, this sounds like a lot of work. You know, what Erik talked about is great, all this automation. It sounds like a lot of work, right? But let me show you the tax benefits behind it so that you could see that if you take the time to put all this automation in, make your properties rentable and likable and all this, and you do all your material participation. If we go to the next screen, we'll see a little bit more about what the tax savings will be. So on this one, I'm just breaking down again, material participation, what hours count. So I have clients that tell me, well, I've been sitting here doing research on what my next property should be. Does that count? Not necessarily. Some of the hours will count, and I'll tell you how that works. So showing your property are hours that would count towards material participation, cleaning the unit, doing some of the improvements, collecting rents, making sure that you're placing those ads, communicating with tenants. So being very active with your property. What they don't want is that you spend all this time on Airbnb, on Redfin and Zillow and researching your next property, and just, saying that you spent, X amount of hours doing that, and that's not going to count towards material participation. What they want for material participation hours is going to be that it's impacting the day-to-day operations of that activity. So you researching on another property is not impacting this property. So your short-term rentals. So those hours are not necessarily going to count. Now, where I've seen some hours count is, let's say that I go out and I travel to visit a property that I'm potentially going to be buying. If I don't buy the property, those hours will not count. But if I end up buying that property, then those hours will count. And so it's going to be depending on what ends up happening with that property, that research you did. So again, it's, I have a list that has more information on material participation, more hours, more example of hours that will count towards your material participation. And a lot of us, I have clients that have short-term rentals and long-term rentals, and they're the ones that take care of the major upkeeps. If maybe they're going to go remodel the property, or they're going to paint it, or they're going to do the upkeep of the picket fence, or maybe their yard, they go and they change the flowers. So there's certain projects that will take you some hours, and those hours will count towards your material participation. So it doesn't mean that you have to do all your hours in broken down in each week or each month or anything like that. You can go in the summer and change your flower beds, and that can count towards your material participation. It's just logging that is the most important thing that you want to make sure that you do. So if you go to the next screen, I kind of did a little case study here for you guys to get some numbers in your head. Now, in this case study, I put Dr. Joe and is married but has no kids. So, or the kids are older, doesn't really matter, right? The point is that the kids are not going to count towards this strategy here. But they have a W-2 income of $300,000 and a K-1 income from a small business of $150,000. So combined, the income here is $450,000. Now, they have itemized deductions. This is their primary residence. Maybe they did some donations and things like that. Their itemized deductions is $48,000. So we get to reduce the $450,000 by the $48,000, leaving us with a taxable income of $402,000. That $402,000 is going to cost this couple in federal taxes $86,000. In California, because that's where I'm at, it's going to cost them an additional $30,000. I know you guys are in different states, so the state's going to vary. But total tax for this client is $117,000. Now that's a lot of money. I would see this client and I would come up with a whole bunch of different ways to try to reduce that tax liability, right? Because there are many ways that we can do that. It just requires strategy and planning. So if you go into the next screen, the income of $450,000, in this case, we're going to use the short-term rental loophole. So the client's still at $450,000. But with the short-term rental loophole, what we did is we have a short-term rental and we added a cost segregation. With the cost segregation, what I did here is I accelerated the depreciation that a short-term rental would have of 39 years. And I reduced it so that all of a sudden we could take advantage of it and take it in year one. Now, this property was not a really expensive property, but it was somewhere around $600,000. What that did is it allowed us to take $156,000 of a deduction in year one. Now, this is a very conservative deduction. I have seen cost segregations a lot higher than 156, but I kind of just wanted to give you a scenario of what cost segregation would do. So if it allows us to take that $156,000 against our income of $450,000, and our itemized deductions of $48,000, all of a sudden this taxable income is now $247,000. Our federal tax reduced to $46,000, and our California tax reduced to $16,000, leaving us with the total tax of $62,000. So when you go to the next screen, it'll show you a comparison that our tax liability went from $117,000 to $62,000, total savings of $54,000 just on this one short-term rental. Now you have an asset that, like typical real estate, will appreciate over time. There's possible cash flow with this property. And so the strategy behind having these rentals is that you understand your taxes enough to know, can you utilize strategies like this? What will be the tax savings behind a strategy like this? I have a lot of clients who have, when they initially come to me, they can have rental properties that they've had. Maybe they have short-term rentals and long-term rentals. So what are the strategies there? The trick is when you have clients that, for example, me, I'm very busy and I'm like, I don't want to do a short-term rental. It requires a lot of work on my end and I don't want to do it. Well, doesn't mean that you can't buy a short-term rental property right around now, okay, September, October. You make it a short-term rental through the end of the year, okay? You meet all the material participation hours, you meet all the short-term rental qualifications that it needs, and then beginning January 1st, I turn it into a long-term rental property, and I sign a 1-year lease with my new tenant. But guess what? For 2024, I get to take the short-term rentals deduction of $54,000 in this example, and then beginning the new year, it falls into now the long-term rental rules. So there's many ways that we can do things like this, and I have many clients that strategically look for their next property, strategically look at what strategy they're going to take, what loophole they're going to fall in through, and then take it. And then the IRS doesn't say you have to keep it like that for 5 years or 10 years or whatever. You can literally change the status of that property starting the new year. So there's always ways that we can plan for, taking advantage of the tax code. Now, the cost segregation that I mentioned and the acceleration of depreciation is something that's going to be up in the air for a little while, because starting 2025, I believe it sunsets in 2025. So starting 2026, we don't know if they're going to allow us to take bonus depreciation and accelerated depreciation anymore. So we may have to look at other ways of taking advantage of rentals. But, that's why it's important to meet with your tax professionals frequently so that you know what the current tax law is going to allow you to do. These last few years with short-term rentals and this loophole, this has also one of the reasons why Airbnb, VRBO, all these short-term rentals have become so popular, because who doesn't want to take advantage of huge tax savings like these? So that's one of the things, but I think this was my last slide for me.
Yeah.
This
is such a great way to end. Justin has a raised hand. What's your question?
Yeah, I've got a question. Was your example based on the 60% of the allowed bonus depreciation for 2024? And second question is, do you have a cost seg firm or company that you would recommend?
Yeah. So in that example, it was something, because remember, with a cost segregation, I could go back and do a cost segregation in 2024 for a property that was acquired in 2022, for example. So the tax return would allow me to take 100% of that depreciation in the 2022 time frame, right? So in this example, it had, I think it did have 100%. I believe it did have 100%, because this was an actual tax client that I did. So I believe it was 100% on this one, but I held it very conservative. I didn't take the full depreciation on it because of the fact that there is an 80% limitation for 2023. And now it's down to 60% for 2024. And for cost segregation companies, I like using the DIY. It's do it yourself. It's called DIY cost seg. Most of my clients that do the DIY, they know their property enough. They're very involved with their properties that they can answer the question whether you have hardwood floors, tile floors, what kind of roof do you have, you know, things like that. So the DIY cost seg is going to be the most cost efficient, and you can answer all the questions on there. If you want a company to do it for you that sends out like their own engineers and stuff like that, I work with 2 companies, and I can always send you the information on those too.
No, I love that you can DIY. I had no idea.
Yeah, it's literally, that's what it's called, DIY cost seg.
Yep. I just put what I think is the link in the chat. So it's DIY, it's costsegeasy.com. So, yeah, it's in the chat. Yeah, this is so amazing. And that's the thing, like I'm actually going back to 2022 and doing this for some of my properties that I acquired when we still had 100% bonus depreciation. So you can look for anybody that hasn't done.
I have another client who I'm going to run this. I'm going to do a cost segregation for a property that they acquired back in 2021, I believe it was. But this year, because they retired, because all of a sudden they can qualify for real estate professional. They don't have the full-time job anymore. They qualify for real estate professional in 2024. All of a sudden that cost seg is going to be all released for them, even though it was acquired in 2021 and they didn't qualify for real estate professional in 21 because they still worked, but because they're no longer working full-time job in 2024, they're going to open up the real estate professional status, apply the cost segregation, and all of a sudden there's no taxable income on it, on their retirement or any of the payouts that they received from their employer this year. So it's kind of cool.
That's amazing. Well, I want to make sure. Okay. Yeah. Justin.
Sorry, one more question. So we have 2 short-term rentals that came online in 2024, and we've got a third one in the pipeline. Would you suggest taking the bonus depreciation in 2025 for the third short-term rental coming on board in 2024?
It's going to depend on your scenario. Remember how I said if there's a reason why you would want to release it now versus then, because once you release it, you don't lose it. You bank it, right? It goes into your losses that you'll be able to carry forward. But then those losses are not released against other types of income all the time in 2025. So you just got to look at what's happening now, what's going to be happening in 2025. Like, when is the best scenario for you to release it? So that's why we do projections. That's why we have those meetings, because you want to make sure you plan this, you know, accurately. If I would have done the cost segregation for my client back in 2021 or 22, when they had this rental property, I would have generated all those losses that they couldn't use because they have a full-time job. Well, in 2024, now that they don't have a full-time job and they're real estate professionals, it won't release those losses that are created back in those years. The IRS says, no, those losses were generated back then. They can only offset real estate income. So the fact that they have now pension distributions, they have, you know, all these other distributions, they can't use those losses against this new income. But the fact that I'm releasing them in the 2024 year, it's fair game. I can use it against any income.
Okay.
Awesome.
Okay.
Amazing. So here are QR codes. The one on the left is to connect directly to Sugey. The one on the right is to connect directly with Erik. So, you know, snap their contact information or write it down. It's also in the chat. We will have a copy of the recording of this meetup, and everything that's in the chat will be on our private Facebook page. So if we have your email, we will invite you to that Facebook page. And if I'm going to try to find wherever it is here, I'll put it in the chat for those of you that are not on there yet. If you join, it's just the Central Oregon Investor Network private Facebook group. We always have everything there, so you can take a look at it later. And I'm just so excited. Like, I have an STR. I know a lot of people here on the call do, or there's people that are like, oh, wow, maybe I need to buy one like before the end of the year. So yeah, it's just so fascinating to see how we can automate things. We can self-manage and use tools that make us look like we have a professional manager. So yeah, this is tons of great information. I'm just so appreciative to our wonderful guest speakers that are incredibly knowledgeable. And now you have like their contact information. Sugey, I put yours in the chat as well. So please connect with these wonderful folks who can help you with your tax strategy, can help you with your short-term rental property strategy. And if you need to buy a property in Central Oregon before the end of the year, you know who to call. So thank you all. We really appreciate it. This was awesome. And any last questions before we sign off?
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
It was
everyone.
great to connect with you
Very
all.
good information.
All right. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.